Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Thursday Night Hockey Show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, for another fun-filled show. This week, we're talking about what's going on in the NHL. Some trades have happened in the last week, so yay trades. We'll also talk about some injuries that are hitting the league as we get closer to the March 3rd trade deadline. So let's get into it with let's talk about our games tonight. So tonight's games, we've got a pretty full schedule. Starting at all these times are 7 o'clock Eastern or Eastern Standard Time. Anaheim is going to be in Washington at 7 o'clock. Buffalo is in Tampa. Edmonton is in Pittsburgh. LA is in New Jersey, and New York will be traveling to Detroit at 8 p.m. Vancouver is in St. Louis. At 9 p.m., Calgary is in Vegas. And at 10 p.m., a pair of tilts, the Boston Bruins are taking on the Seattle Kraken, and the Nashville Predators are in San Jose to take on the Sharks. So it's a pretty full night tonight of games, and they go throughout the night. So it's a good mix of early and late games for you to watch throughout the evening, starting at 7 p.m., probably going till about 1:30 Eastern. So enjoy the night of hockey. Actually, probably about 12:30 Eastern for the games tonight. But enjoy the hockey tonight. It's going to be a good night of games, some meaningful playoff games, teams fighting for it, and teams that are pretty comfortable just fighting for positioning. So thanks to everybody watching on TikTok. Thank you for watching on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching us from. Really appreciate it. If you're on TikTok, please hit the screen and give us some likes. Helps boost the algorithm and lets people know that there's something worth watching. And again, on Facebook, I'll remove this. You can see, or if you're on anything on YouTube, you can go to Papaduke, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon to get reminders of when we go live. And of course, you can watch the show on demand after the show airs each week. This show airs on Thursday nights. We also have the political deep dive that airs on Sunday nights at 10 p.m. But you can watch those shows anytime on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. So, um, but anyway, let's get into it with the breaking news of the evening that we'll be covering. Yeah, so last week we reported that Alexander Ovechkin had left the team on Valentine's Day to go to Russia. Uh, After it was announced that his father had passed away in Russia. Sad story for Ovechkin. You know, he's very close to his father, and his father had really had health issues for several years and was not able to travel to the United States. So, um, uh, when Ovechkin won the cup in 2018, he wasn't able to see. His father wasn't in the states to watch that. He had been pretty close to him during the early part of his career and being in the United States quite a bit, but over the last few years, just hadn't been able to travel. He finally passed away on apparently Valentine's Day, and so um, he's going to return. The Caps had announced they were going to give him as much time as he needed to recover from the long trip, a long trying and emotional trip, of course, for him. And it turns out that he's going to play tonight. The Caps did not do well in his absence. They have lost 5 in a row, 4 of those while he was absent, including 2 against Carolina, one being that outdoor game, which was by all measures a success. Packed crowd at Carter Finley Stadium, and pretty good atmosphere. Uh, wasn't a fan of the musical acts. I thought they were kind of a little hokey, but the game itself was entertaining. The Canes won 4-1 in that game. So, but Alex Ovechkin returning for the Capitals none too soon, because they went from wild card one before he left all the way out of the playoffs and into fifth place in the wild card standings in the Eastern Conference. But the wild card standings are very compact. The only problem for the Capitals is they played so many more games than some of the teams that are chasing them. So they're going to have to really turn it up to ensure themselves a place in the playoffs this year. Um, the other big news. So today, ESPN released a list uh, This list is the top centers in the league, and it was voted on by executives and players. So we'll go through this list. These are always interesting to watch to see where they rank these folks. Of course, the top center in the league is going to be your kind of. Well, they got. I'm sorry, this is the wingers one. I scroll down to the wingers. So they did the wingers and the centers one. The wingers one came out a few days ago. So top winger of the league is David Pastrnak. Not a surprise. Um, he's going to make a lot of money this summer. Nikita Kucherov, again, not a surprise. Very good winger for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Um, yeah, I don't have a problem with him being here. Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. Maybe not the body of work that your Kucherov or Pastrnak have, but in a couple of years, he's really proved his worth for being one of the top flight wingers in the league. I don't have a problem with him being at 3, nor do I have a problem with Mitch Marner being at number 4. Marner is an assist machine. He's especially this season. The other night when he played the Sabres, he had like 4 assists in the game. Doesn't get you a ton of goals, but he'll set him up. So keep putting in the goal scorers next to him, and he will set him up. He'll be that Adam Oates type player. Let's see, number 5. They have Miko Rantanen of the Colorado Avalanche. Um, just this guy benefits me on being a seriously loaded team, but he is a fantastic winger. I don't know if I'd have him at 5. I think he in the fantasy world they call it Foxy by proxy. He's on a really good line. Um, do I think he drives the line? Not really, but I think he does. He's a very talented winger. Number 6, Brad Marchand. I hate Brad Marchand, but I do see his value, so I'm not too opposed to him being number 6. Number 7, I probably would have him over Marchand and definitely over Mr. Rantanen is Artemi Panarin. This guy is the straw that stirs the drink for the Rangers, and he's a big time player. So I'm not gonna. I wouldn't put him down at 7. I'd have him much higher. Matthew Kachuk, again, a big player. He puts up a lot of points. Um, I do think that the trade that Florida made with Calgary to get Kachuk down to the beach didn't really work out for either team. They're both Kachuk and Huberto are struggling in their first years with teams, which is not unheard of. Guy moving to a completely new location. Sometimes it takes a year or 2 for them to adjust. But uh, I'm okay. I think in a couple years you'll probably see Brady overcoming him. Jason Robertson, I'd have this guy much higher on this list. Jason Robertson is a sniper, and he is um, uh, he's just money. I think that he is the straw that stirs the drink in Dallas, and deserves to be much higher than ninth on the list. I get that he is a young player, but you know the dude signed a massive contract at the beginning of the year, didn't have any training camp, comes out and he's just sniping this year. And usually that first year after a big contract, the numbers kind of drop off the cliff. He has not done it, so I think he's here to stay. And then number 10, Alex Ovechkin. A guy's got over 800 goals. I'm not going to begrudge him being on the list. Yeah, maybe this might be the last year or 2 that he is on this list, and he is number 10. But I don't begrudge him being on this list. He's still sniping goals at a prodigious rate. I think he's still in the top 10 of goal scoring in the league. So not going to begrudge him being in this place. Yeah, he's 33 goals in 54 games. So um, well earned for Alex Ovechkin. Let me pop back out and we'll go to the centers. So the top 10 centers, of course, it's going to be Connor McDavid number 1. I mean, there's just no argument that could be made for any other player in the league other than Connor McDavid being the number one center in the league. He's just stacking points, and um, there's no slowing him down. Number 2 is Austin Matthews. Um, I think there's just got to be another gear that Matthews gets to even get close to Connor McDavid. But he scored 60 goals last season. Um, he's had a little bit of injury trouble this season, so he's probably not on that. He's not going to be on that pace this year. But still, not a bad choice at number 2. Number 3, Nathan McKinnon. He won the Stanley Cup last year. He is the big dog in that house. You can make an argument for Kale McCarr, but McKinnon. I would say Kale McCarr in a couple of years would be the big dog on that team. But Nathan McKinnon is the big dog in Colorado and carrying that team. So Sidney Crosby. Uh, Yeah, I mean, it's middle of the pack here of the top 10. I don't know it's that close between McKinnon and Crosby and anybody above McKinnon. Um, let's see who else they've got on this list. Leon Draisaitl. It's funny because when Edmonton needs offense, it's Draisaitl getting moved to the wing to play with McDavid, but is a phenomenal center in and of himself. It's just I think Edmonton goes too heavily towards that rotation where they've got to bring Draisaitl in on the line with McDavid. They've made some good acquisitions over the last couple of years and have not had to rely on it as heavily, but you'll see it probably as we get into the playoffs and Edmonton may be down a game or so, they'll start stacking these guys on the same line. But again, not a bad choice at number 5. In fact, as far as skill goes, current skill, I would say Leon's probably better than Crosby at this point. Alexander Barkov, a great talented player. Had a little bit of he has a little bit of injury issues, but when he's on the ice, he's a force for the Panthers. I don't have a problem with him at 6. Braden Point, this is he's a good player. Not going to lie. I mean, he's a really good center. Um, it's I don't know. I if I'm going to make a list of 10 centers in the league, I don't know that I'd have Braden Point at 7 on on that list. Jack Hughes, number 8, not a problem with that. Young up and coming superstar. He's been worth the hype. There was a little question the first year or two whether he was worth the hype of being a number 1 overall pick. I think he's proved that in spades, and he's definitely a player to reckon with as we go on in the future. He'll be climbing up this list. Treese Bergeron of the Boston Bruins. Um, if you're going to talk about this guy, this is all the intangibles. The fact that he is, honestly, the Selke Award should probably be named for him. Yeah, so Patrice Bergeron, number 9. I don't have a problem with that. I would have him a little bit higher if it was a couple years earlier. Now that he is really, last season or two of his career, I don't have a problem with him being at number 9. And finally, number 10, Tage Thompson of the Buffalo Sabres. If you had said 3 years ago that Tage Thompson would be a top 10 center in the NHL, people would have laughed at you. So much untapped potential in those first few years, uh, both in St. Louis and then after the trade to Buffalo, that people were, saying that this guy's a bust. And he finally figured out how to use that massive frame of his, finally learned how to trust his shot, and he's on the list this year. So good to see that Tage Thompson's made the list. Number 10, probably where it needs to be at this point. Still needs to prove this over a multiple season effort. This is his second season of really just kind of jumping off the page at people. But he's already improved off of last year. Um, can he do it again next year or match what he's doing this year, next year? That's going to be the question for Tage Thompson, whether he continues to appear on this list. Now, the interesting thing, and they note this in the article, is that he actually tied on points from the general managers, the executives, and the players with another center, and that center was Jack Eichel of the Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel is the first honorable mention. Um, Interesting. Jack Eichel's had a difficult season, and he's had a lot of difficult seasons. Last year he had the neck issue. Well, the last 2 seasons he had the neck issue that kept him out of the end of the his final full season in Buffalo, and then the first half of the season between Buffalo and the Vegas Golden Knights. He's had injuries this season that have kept him out of about 13 games this year, and but he's still right there at about a point a game. So if Eichel can stay healthy and if the Vegas Golden Knights can make the playoffs and he finally makes the playoffs once, um, congratulations to him. That uh, it's been a long time coming for him, and I'm sure he'll relish the opportunity to play in the playoffs. And right now, the Vegas Golden Knights are in good position, although the Pacific Division is incredibly tight right now. So that's the two things. Let's get into trades that have happened this week. We've had several. Some make sense, some make no sense whatsoever. Some indicate that there might be something more going uh, on both ends. And the first trade that we're going to talk about, let me get rid of the ESPN screen. Yeah, so the first trade we're going to talk about is last night the Ottawa Senators traded Nikita Zaitsev to Chicago. Not sure why it didn't seem like a logical reason to trade a guy off your roster if you're competing for the playoffs to one of the worst teams in the league. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense from Chicago's perspective. The Zaitsev's 31 years old. Um, and what the return was interesting because it was not only Nikita Zaitsev, but Ottawa traded a second round pick this year and a fourth round pick in 2026 to Chicago in exchange for future considerations, which if you notice my name on Facebook and YouTube, it's exchange for future considerations because I don't know what that means. What those are, it's for the future to consider, I guess. But my guess is that the 31-year-old Zaitsev will be moved again before the trade deadline to a contending team that needs a little bit of help on the defensive end. Um, but yeah, I don't think he's long for Chicago, and I don't think he's like a long-term piece of the solution in Chicago. Of course, Chicago is now still waiting on Patrick Kane to make up his mind. He has been scoring in bunches lately, probably trying to prove his trade worth to some prospective suitor out there. Um, watching the game last night against Dallas was pretty impressive. He still looks good. Second trade to talk about. This one, let me talk a little bit about the Sens side of that trade. Yes, they did it for future considerations, but they also take off like 4.5 million off of their cap. There's rumors that they're looking at defensive help, like a Jacob Chikrin or somebody Gavrikov out of Columbus, and they needed to move some salary out, but despite having I think they have a pretty good amount of cap space. Let me see where they're at. Oh, that's not them. There we go. I just forget how ugly they're. Yeah, I mean they've got 6.2 million, so they could bring in a Chikrin and probably bring in a few other players because the salary is prorated at this point. But then they'd have to have considerations for the next few seasons. But um, yeah. So the second trade would have been a great trade a couple years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, for this team. But doesn't mean it's all it is a cap move. But Shea Weber was traded by the Vegas Golden Knights to Arizona in exchange for a minor league defenseman named Dyson Mayo. And Mayo immediately went to the Vegas Golden Knights minor league affiliate in Henderson, Nevada. Um, Weber Weber hasn't played since the fifth game of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021, when during the lockout shortened season for a second lockout shortened season, non-bubble season. I don't think he's going to be playing again. He had like serious knee and hip injuries, and I think he's done. This is just a move to get that long-term injured reserve money off of Vegas's books, and put it onto a place that needs it because they're probably going to if Arizona trades guys like Chikrin and Shane Gostisbehere, they're going to need to get to the salary cap floor. So if they make um, Shea Weber's 7 million, 7+ million uh, active, then that helps them get to the Stanley Cup or to the cap floor. Um, it's a interesting cap move, but this is what you see. You see teams moving money around, trying to get free up space to make that big splashy acquisition as we get closer to the trade deadline. Um, the big trade this week was the Toronto Maple Leafs jumping into the market. They made the biggest trade splash this week by acquiring former Conn Smythe and Stanley Cup winning captain Ryan O'Reilly, Nola Chari from the St. Louis Blues, and Josh Pilar from the Minnesota Wild in a three-team trade between St. Louis, Minnesota, and Toronto. Um, for St. Louis's trouble, the Blues pick up prospect named Mikhail Abramov, Adam Gaudette, and the Leafs' first round pick this year, the second round pick in 23. That's a Ottawa pick, and then the Leafs second in 24. And Minnesota, for their trouble, they get a fourth round pick in 2025. What reason why Minnesota had to get involved was St. Louis is going to retain half of O'Reilly's salary. That trading him through Minnesota allows Minnesota to pick up half of that remaining salary. So they're picking up a quarter of his salary. And that means the Leafs are only on the hook for a quarter of the prorated salary for the rest of the season for Ryan O'Reilly, who becomes a unrestricted free agent on July 1st. Probably the top center acquisition that could be had on July 1. I'm sure the Leafs are hoping that O'Reilly can recapture his magic and lead the Leafs to the Stanley Cup again, like he did in his first season in St. Louis. Time will tell with that. Uh, Another trade. This was actually kind of one of those low key trades that I think is going to be a bigger than people are looking at. It's kind of like one of those Vetrano trades last year that the Rangers did, but the Rangers acquired Tyler Mott from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for forward Julian Gauthier and a conditional seventh round pick in the 2023 draft. Is that a seventh round? I didn't think that. I forgot they had 7 rounds in the 2023 draft. So, um, yeah, it's just a really good depth forward for the Rangers, that third, fourth line guy that they're going to lean on heavily for those crucial minutes late in games in the playoffs. And then just a minor league deal that came about Anaheim Ducks acquiring forward Josiah Slavin. I think his brother is Josh Slavin of the Carolina Hurricanes. But Josiah Slavin is going from the Blackhawks to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for a forward named Hunter Drew. Again, it's minor league deal, nothing big, but that's what's going on in the world of trades and the breaking news that's going on. Let's take a look at the injury report. Yeah, so some key injuries that are coming down, and I think are going to have some determination on what goes on as we go down the rest of the season. Ryan Johansson is now out 12 weeks, which is, if they make the playoffs, we'll put it probably second or third round before he could return. But Ryan Johansson of the Nashville Predators had his leg cut in a game against Vancouver the other day. I believe it was Quinn Hughes that accidentally cut his leg with a skate. And yeah, it was the back of the right lower leg, so it could have been an Achilles or something related. But yeah, he's out for 12 weeks, which is a significant hit to Nashville, who not really in a great playoff position now. They're 7 points back of the wild card. They barely got in by the skin of their teeth last season, and got the hell beat out of it by Colorado for its trebles. So I would expect that Nashville moves from a buyer to a seller um, at the trade deadline so that they can start retooling that roster because it's a decent roster, but it's only decent enough to get you in that middle of the pack, maybe get in the playoffs, maybe miss the playoffs kind of team. So um, let's see. It was announced that Toronto's Jake Muzzin is going to miss the rest of the season. He has been injured since late October, October 27th, with a back injury. He's going to have spinal surgery for his cervical spine, so he'll be out the rest of the season. They're saying that he will probably be okay for the start of training camp, but again, back injuries are a whole level of special for a player to go through. So um, there have been many careers ended prematurely because of back injuries. Matthew Barzal is out week to week for the New York Islanders, which makes that Bo Horvat trade all the more important for the Islanders. Um, uh, the Islanders have played well since acquiring Bo Horvat, but again, they played so many games this season that they're kind of in that position where they really need to play almost flawless hockey down the stretch to ensure a run to the playoffs. But yeah, Barzal's out week to week. He left a loss to the Boston Bruins on Saturday. He was hit by Craig Smith, and it was a lower body injury. He tried to get back on the ice after a stoppage in play, but didn't work out for him. And so, yeah, week to week for him, probably a high ankle sprain of some sort. Now, well, we reported he was hurt last week. We didn't know the extent of the injury. We just knew he was out indefinitely, and that's still the case. But it was reported that Eric Johnson is out indefinitely with a broken ankle from block shot. So um, likely won't return anytime before the playoffs. It'll be a long time for Eric Johnson, I think. Um, the ankle is a very difficult thing for a hockey player to have broken. So we may not see him for the rest of the year. All right. Injury report over. Let's go to our discipline. All right. So, in the discipline arena this week, only one story. Detroit Red Wings forward Dylan Larkin was fined $5,000, the maximum allowable under the collective bargaining agreement, for cross-checking Washington Capitals forward TJ Oshie in a game against Washington on Tuesday, February 21st. And so, yeah, $5,000 lighter for the pending free agent. Could be traded here at the deadline. Could sign a contract extension with Detroit. Just not sure yet, but it's not a lot of money for the guy. He's going to be okay. No one take up a collection for him. Let's go to our hot and not players, teams and players of the week. All right. So players of the week. Let's talk about our three stars of the week announced by the NHL on Tuesday, I believe. Tim Stützle of the Ottawa Senators had a fantastic week. In 4 games played, he had 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points in those games. Ottawa went 3-0-1 in those 4 games, collecting 7 out of 8 points. A good week for the Senators. They kind of climbed back into that Eastern Conference playoff race, which is why they probably made some of the moves that they've made to clear some cap space. Nathan McKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche, he scored 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points in 4 games as well. And then the aforementioned Dylan Larkin didn't get suspended, was able to collect 4 goals, 4 assists, and 8 points in 4 games. So 2 points a game for Dylan Larkin. Um, Again, putting pressure on the Leafs, or not the Leafs, but the Red Wings management to either sign him or trade him ahead of the trade deadline, um, or risk losing him for nothing in free agency. So, um, let's talk about our teams of the week. Let's go to the Metro Division. In the Metro Division, we're talking Carolina. They've won 4 in a row, including the Stadium Series game at Carter Finley Stadium, and they've won 9 of 10. They're solidifying their position on top of the Metro Division, despite teams like the Islanders and the Rangers making big acquisitions. They're still keeping distance from those guys. So. Um, our cold team of the week in the Metro is Washington. The Caps, as I mentioned before, losers 5 in a row. And they've slid out of the playoffs, which that spot they had been holding for quite a while. Whether it's playoff wild card one or wild card two, they had been in that position for a while. They've slid completely out. Um, uh, and they played a lot more games than the teams that are chasing them. So they're going to have to play really well over the stretch to ensure a playoff run. Let's see. Team of the week, Ottawa Senators. Wow, there we go. Ottawa Senators. Yeah, division best 7-2-1 in the last 10. They've climbed back into the, as I mentioned, climbed back into the playoff conversation. They're only 2 points behind Buffalo, 4 points behind Florida for for the wild card. So good job by Ottawa. Um, and it'll be interesting to see who they acquire in the next week or so. Coldest team in the Atlantic, Montreal. It's the only team in the last 10 that have played under 500, and they were like 4-5-1. So it's not like they were just absolutely abysmal, but still they're in the tank battle. They're the best last place team in the league. Um, I don't anticipate them winning the tank. They'll probably have to hope that the lottery balls fall in their place to get Connor Bedard. Team of the week in the Central. This is a surprise, but the Chicago Blackhawks. They've won 4 in a row. I watched the game last night between Dallas and Chicago. It was an interesting game because I would say for the first half of that game, Dallas looked like they were going to run away with it. They were up 3-0. They had just scored a power play, got another power play, and they were, yeah, I mean, it just looked like it was like Harlem Globetrotters on the ice. And they didn't look like they were Harlem Globetrotters on the ice, and they're playing a different sport because Chicago came back. Patrick Kane looked phenomenal. Max Domi looked phenomenal. They're really clicking last night. I think both had 2 goals on the night, and the Blackhawks won 4-3 over Dallas. So, but yeah, 4 straight for Chicago. This is probably the first time and probably the last time that we'll see them on this this list because it's getting close to the end of the season. It's losing time for the Blackhawks. I'm anticipating that Kane makes himself available for a couple clubs and they're able to work something out with one of them. But um, the what they get back. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if Max Domi gets dealt. I think he's only there on a show me deal anyway, so they could move Max Domi out to a contender who needs a little bit of grit in the forward core. I wouldn't mind seeing him in Buffalo, if Buffalo can make that work. So, coldest team in the Central Division are the St. Louis Blues, primarily because Doug Armstrong has waved the white towel on the season by trading off O'Reilly. I mean, he could have said that we were just making a hockey move with Tarasenko, but when you trade off most of the forward core that carried you to the Stanley Cup, um, yeah, it's over in St. Louis. The determination that needs to be made is that whether it's going to be a full rebuild or just retooling and coming back strong next season. Um, it sounds more like a rebuild than a retool. So, team of the week in the Pacific Division. Yeah, let's talk about the Los Angeles Kings. They're the division best, 7-2-1 in the last 10 games. I will say I will do kind of an honorable mention in this one, and that Edmonton was I want to say 4, 1, and 5 in the last 10 games. So they've gotten points in 9 of the last 10 games. But losing 6 of the last 10 keeps them out of the team of the week of the Pacific. And our team of the week in the Pacific, not so much cold, but Seattle is just kind of on a warning right now. They've had a 4-5-1 run in the last 10, and they're on danger of slipping from one of those top 3 positions in the Pacific to a wild card position, and that, at that point, your hold on the playoffs is very tenuous. Again, the Pacific Division is ridiculously close, so we could see 3 teams make the playoffs and no wild cards out of the Pacific. We could see the Pacific send 5 teams to the playoffs with both wild cards. It's that close out in the Western Conference. So, um, but anyway, let's talk about the Sabres beat before we move on for the rest of the night and enjoy some hockey. Sabres, boy, that was it's been a mixed bag. They've been 500 the last 4 games. A loss, pretty handy loss to the Kings. Not a big surprise. Kings have a good team, and there was out in LA. And then Buffalo finished the road trip strong with 2 wins against Anaheim and San Jose, teams they should beat. Um, the problem was there those defensive lapses that they had, that have creeped up all season were continuing to creep up even in the games in Anaheim and San Jose. They were able to win those games because 'cause they're just a better team. But when they came home to KeyBank Center and played their rival, the Leafs, they came out flat. And that's been a recurring theme for the Sabres. They're 11, 15, and 2 at home this season. They're doing really well on the road, and hopefully they can keep that up. They've got tonight at road in Tampa and Florida before coming home to play the Caps. But yeah, Sabres need to figure it out at home and coming out against your rival team, even though you had just come back from the West Coast on a long, not even a long trip, it was a 3-game trip out to the West Coast. The games were decently spaced apart. They played Saturday, got back into Buffalo, and didn't play till Tuesday, and came out flat against their main rival. Um, that it was just frustrating to see with Buffalo, um, and I'm getting a little tired of Granato's post game press conferences because it almost seems like he doesn't see the defensive breakdowns, or he's not willing to call that stuff out. And I get that some coaches have their own style when it comes to this stuff, but it's as bad as that game was. I was okay with the fight back that they had. But you can't play like crap for 50 minutes and expect to turn it on for 10 minutes and win a game. You're down 4-0 at the end of one, 5-0 at the end of two. You score 3 goals, um, uh, you know, between 10 minutes and 3 minutes left to go in the game. Tage Thompson had a really nice chance with about 2 minutes left that hit off the knob of Samsonov's stick and kept it from, being a 1 goal game at that point. But um, just they did not look like a really good team at the beginning of that game. It looked like a previous 10 years Buffalo Sabres. So which is strange because last year they wrecked the Leafs. Like, I don't know if the Leafs just didn't take them seriously last season or what, but they really dominated the Leafs last year. And so to see them get dominated at home by the Leafs is disappointing. Of course, with all the Leafs fans in attendance, um, makes it doubly so. And one of the worst things is the fact that it was on ESPN, so I had to listen to John Buccigross call the game. I absolutely abhor his play-by-play. So anyway, that is it for this week. I hope you enjoy the hockey games tonight. Let me see if I can see some scores going on. We got games started, haven't started in Tampa, so Buffalo, Tampa 0-0. Just started in Pittsburgh, Edmonton and Pittsburgh 0-0. In fact, all the games, uh, Devils, Kings, Blue Jackets, uh, Wild, and the Red Wings and New York Rangers are all scoreless, just getting underway. So go out there and enjoy those games tonight, and we'll talk to everybody next week. Have a good one, everybody.